Port-au-Prince, December 1914. The flag flies, the laws are written, the ministers hold office. But inside a vault at the Banque Nationale, American banker Roger Farnham is doing what no minister can, redirecting Haiti's entire customs revenue toward New York. National City Bank had bought half the bank in 1911. By 1914, Farnham ran it on the ground as vice president. That December, he had roughly $500,000 in Haitian gold reserves loaded onto the USS Machias during the quiet lunch hour, timed deliberately so no crowd would gather to watch the reserve leave. Not one U.S. Marine had landed yet. None needed to. The money had already moved. Subscribe to Fiscal Relics now, because after what you have just heard, we may not meet again. And there are too many vaults left to open. Next time you read the words stabilization loan in a headline, ask who actually holds the account. The trigger wasn't a coup. It was an old debt nobody alive in 1914 had created. Back in 1825, France forced the newly independent Haiti to pay roughly 150 million francs simply to be recognized as a country at all, worth an estimated $560 million today, paid off in installments over more than a century. That old debt became the leash National City Bank quietly picked up. Its terms were blunt: hand over control of the bank, or default and lose all access to credit. Farnham didn't invade for this. Haiti invited him in, hoping a foreign manager would calm foreign creditors. Once he held the revenue, Haiti wasn't governing its own money anymore. It was waiting on the next ship from New York. Check who holds your own country's foreign debt. The lender's name tells you more than the headline does. A banker in a vault, a flag still flying outside. By the time the ship docks, the country's money is already gone. That scene repeats once more, 60 years earlier, on the other side of the planet. Same trick, different ocean. And this time, it lasts 45 years instead of a few months. If a stranger controlled every dollar your government collected, would you still call your country independent, or just polite about it? But Farnham was an amateur next to the man who built this exact machine first, 60 years earlier. In 1854, a 19-year-old Irishman named Robert Hart arrived in China as a junior consular clerk. By age 28, he was running the entire Chinese Maritime Customs Service. For the next 45 years, he sat at the tap of an empire, collecting duties at every treaty port and funneling the silver straight to British and French banks to pay off the Opium War indemnities. By 1895, his service employed more than 700 Westerners and 3,500 Chinese staff, taking in over 27 million tiles a year. If you want to spot this pattern elsewhere, search any country's customs history for the phrase foreign-administered. It shows up more often than you'd expect. Here is the difference that matters. Farnham was temporary, but Hart was structural. He didn't just collect taxes. He wrote the manuals, trained the staff, and built the only system China had for tracking its own foreign trade. He made himself the one man who actually understood how the money moved through the whole network. When a government depends on a foreigner just to read its own ledgers, that foreigner stops being staff and becomes the nervous system itself. Hart couldn't be fired because the entire service would have gone blind the moment he walked out the door. He wasn't holding the keys anymore. He had become the lock. Ask the same question of any system you depend on. Who's the one person nobody there can actually replace? Quick pause. If you notice when a system quietly outgrows the people meant to control it, subscribe. What's next shows exactly how this trick repeats, and how it always starts with a debt nobody questioned closely enough. Hart never commanded a single soldier in his 45 years in China. He commanded ledgers instead, and that turned out to be enough. He knew which merchant was bribing a clerk, which ship was running tea past inspection at Shanghai, and which port was falling behind on interest payments owed to London. In Haiti, Farnham held the identical cards decades later, just with smaller numbers and a shorter timeline. Control the books, and you control the political temperature of an entire country before its own ministers even notice anything is wrong. Information moved faster than government did, in both cases, by design rather than accident. The next time a company offers you visibility into your finances for free, remember exactly what visibility bought these two men. So why didn't the Qing court simply fire him after decades of foreign control over the treasury? Because the treaties were written in blood, ink, and collateral, not just routine policy. China's customs revenue had been pledged directly to British and French banks, and Hart was the personal guarantor those banks trusted to keep the payments flowing on schedule, year after year. Removing him wasn't a personnel decision. It was a technical default, and a default meant gunboats appearing on the horizon within weeks, not months. The emperor hadn't just hired a clerk, he had signed away the right to manage his own treasury, permanently and on paper. Read the fine print before signing any agreement that hands a third party direct access to your accounts. We tend to look for the conqueror in the uniform, but the trap is rarely set by a soldier at all. These men weren't invaders. They were appointees, invited in by the very governments they ended up controlling completely. The Qing court appointed Hart directly in writing. The Haitian government signed the bank agreement willingly, hoping a neutral foreign hand would calm the chaos at home before it got worse. But once appointed, both men became fixtures nobody could remove without triggering the exact collapse they had been brought in to prevent. The signature on the contract is the actual trap. Once it dries, the door locks from the inside. Before signing anything described as neutral oversight, ask who benefits most if you're never able to undo it. Port-au-Prince, 1915. Beijing, 1854. 2 centuries, 2 oceans apart, and one unchanging mechanism sitting underneath both stories. A foreign debt opens the door, a single appointee walks calmly through it, and the state keeps its flag, its capital city, and its pride intact while quietly losing its real agency over its own money and its own future. Robert Hart and Roger Farnham were the invisible accountants of empire. Living proof that you never need to capture a capital city if you can simply capture its customs house instead. Watch for the same shape the next time any country accepts a loan with strings attached to it. The strings are rarely about the money alone. 2 men, 2 centuries, 1 role. A private collector answering to creditors, not to the citizens whose lives he held in his ledger. Look closely at the fine print of history and you'll find this pattern everywhere, often hiding behind a flag that never stopped flying. How many countries today have their own Robert Hart, a foreign hand on a critical account, simply unnoticed?